The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and Clara Jennings stepped into the 42nd floor of Harrison Global Enterprises, balancing 3 coffee cups in a cardboard carrier and a stack of files under her arm that threatened to slide free at any moment. She had exactly 4 minutes to get everything to the conference room before the meeting started, and she knew from 6 months of working here that Xander Harrison, CEO and founder, valued punctuality above almost everything else. She made it with 30 seconds to spare, setting the coffees down on the sleek mahogany table and distributing the quarterly reports to each seat. The other executives filtered in, nodding at her with the distant politeness reserved for assistants who were part of the furniture. Clara had grown used to it. At 24, she was the youngest person in most rooms at Harrison Global, a commercial real estate development company that had transformed skylines across 3 continents. She smoothed down her navy pencil skirt and checked that her blouse was properly tucked in, always conscious of looking professional enough to belong. Xander arrived exactly on time, his presence filling the doorway before he even entered. At 32, he had the kind of authority that came from building something from nothing, from making decisions that moved millions of dollars and affected thousands of lives. His dark hair was slightly disheveled from running his hands through it, something Clara had noticed he did when he was deep in thought. His suit was impeccable, charcoal gray with a crisp white shirt, no tie. He never wore ties. "Morning," he said, his voice carrying that low, measured tone that made everyone straighten in their seats. His eyes, a striking shade of gray-blue, scanned the room and landed briefly on Clara. "Thank you for the setup." She nodded, feeling that small flutter in her chest that she absolutely refused to acknowledge as anything meaningful. He was her boss. More than that, he was the CEO of a company with 3,000 employees, and she was an assistant who still had student loans to pay off. The company handbook was crystal clear about workplace relationships, especially those involving power dynamics. Section 4.7, subsection C. Romantic or sexual relationships between supervisors and direct reports are strictly prohibited and may result in immediate termination. Clara had read the handbook cover to cover her first day. She had no intention of jeopardizing the best job she had ever had. The meeting proceeded with the usual efficiency. Xander led the discussion about a new development project in Austin, his mind clearly 3 steps ahead of everyone else in the room. Clara took notes on her laptop, tracking action items and deadlines. She had developed a system over the past months, color-coding priorities and flagging items that would need Xander's personal attention. He had noticed, commenting once that she had cut his response time in half. It was the best compliment she had received in her professional life. "Clara, can you follow up with the Austin City Planning Department?" Xander asked, looking up from the architectural renderings spread across the table. "We need confirmation on those zoning variances by Friday." "Already scheduled a call for tomorrow morning," she replied, not looking up from her notes. "I also contacted their legal department to expedite the paperwork." Something shifted in his expression, a brief flicker of what might have been appreciation or surprise. "Good thinking." The meeting wrapped up an hour later, and executives filed out, already on their phones making calls and sending emails. Clara began gathering the materials, stacking papers and collecting coffee cups. She was reaching for the last one when Xander spoke. "You do not have to clean up. Facilities can handle that." She glanced up, finding him still seated at the head of the table, his laptop open but his attention on her. "It is faster if I do it. Besides, some of these documents are confidential." "Fair point." He closed his laptop. "How are you finding the Austin project?" "I know it has been demanding," It was unusual for him to make small talk. Their interactions were typically brief and focused on tasks. Clara straightened, holding the stack of cups. It is interesting. Complex, but interesting. The zoning regulations are more intricate than I expected. Most people would just say it is boring paperwork. Most people have not seen what happens when paperwork gets done wrong, Clara said. My father worked in construction for 30 years. I grew up hearing about projects that failed because someone did not file the right permits or missed a regulation. Xander's expression shifted, genuine interest replacing the professional mask. Your father worked in construction, foreman for a residential builder in Ohio. He retired last year. She hesitated, not sure why she was sharing this. He is the one who told me to apply here. He follows Harrison Global Projects, said you actually care about quality, not just profit. There was a long moment of silence. Xander stood, closing the distance between them, and took the coffee cups from her hands. I do care about quality, he said quietly. And that includes the people who work here. You have been doing excellent work, Clara. I know I do not say that often enough. Her heart did that traitorous flutter again. Thank you. That means a lot. He held her gaze for a beat longer than necessary, and Clara felt the temperature in the room shift. Then he stepped back, professional distance restored. I will take these to the break room. You have enough to do. She watched him leave, her pulse racing in a way that had nothing to do with work stress and everything to do with the way he had looked at her. This was dangerous. This was exactly what the handbook warned against. She gathered the remaining files and returned to her desk outside Xander's office, determined to refocus on the dozen tasks waiting for her attention. The afternoon passed in the usual blur of phone calls, emails, and coordination. Clara scheduled meetings, reviewed contracts for errors, and handled a minor crisis when a client showed up 2 hours early for an appointment. She was good at her job, good at anticipating needs and solving problems before they escalated. It was why she had been promoted from the secretarial pool to executive assistant in record time. At 6:30, most of the floor had cleared out. Clara was finishing an email when Xander emerged from his office, laptop bag over his shoulder. You are still here, he observed, just wrapping up. I wanted to get these Austin documents ready for your review tomorrow, he frowned. Clara, it is late. That can wait until morning. It is only 3 more emails, and it will still be 3 emails at 8 tomorrow morning. His tone was firm but not unkind. Go home. Have dinner. Do something that is not work. She saved the draft and shut down her computer, recognizing when to concede. Are you heading out? Eventually. I have a few more calls to make. Clara grabbed her purse and coat. You know, the advice about going home and having dinner applies to you too. The corner of his mouth lifted in what might have been the start of a smile. Noted. Have a good evening, Clara. You too, Xander. She used his first name without thinking, the way she did sometimes when it was just the two of them. He had told her months ago that she did not need to call him Mr. Harrison when they were alone. That formality was exhausting enough without adding to it. She liked that small intimacy, the acknowledgement that they were both people beneath the titles. The subway ride to her apartment in Brooklyn gave her too much time to think. Clara stared at her reflection in the dark window, watching the tunnel lights flash past. She needed to get control of whatever this was. Attraction to your boss was a cliché, the kind of thing that happened in movies and ended badly in real life. Xander was brilliant, driven, and yes, attractive in that understated way that snuck up on you. But he was also completely off limits. She thought about Section 4.7, subsection C. Immediate termination. She could not afford to lose this job, could not afford to blow up her career over feelings that probably were not even reciprocated. He was friendly, appreciative of good work, but that did not mean anything more than professionalism. Except for the way he had looked at her in the conference room. Except for the way he sometimes seemed to find excuses to talk to her about things that were not strictly work-related. Except for the way her name sounded different when he said it. Clara shook her head, unlocking her apartment door. She was overthinking. She was projecting. She needed to stop reading romance novels on her commute because they were clearly warping her perception of reality. The next few weeks proceeded normally, or as normally as they could when you were developing an inconvenient crush on your boss. Clara threw herself into work, taking on extra projects and staying late to avoid too much idle time. Idle time meant thinking, and thinking meant dwelling on things like how Xander had started bringing her coffee in the mornings, always prepared exactly the way she liked it. Or how he had insisted she attend a client dinner, saying her insights on the Austin project were valuable, and how the client had been impressed enough to send her a personal thank you note. It was early October when everything began to shift. Clara was working late on a Friday, the office nearly empty, when Xander appeared at her desk looking exhausted. "Why are you still here?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe of his office. "I could ask you the same question." "Quarterly board report. Due Monday." He rubbed his eyes. "What is your excuse?" "Organizing the files for the Chicago property acquisition. I wanted to get it done before the weekend," Xander sighed. "Clara, you cannot keep doing this." She looked up, surprised by his tone. "Doing what?" "Working 12-hour days, taking projects home." "You were here until 8 last night. So were you." "I own the company. It is different." Clara stood, facing him across her desk. "I care about doing my job well. Is that a problem?" "No, but burning out is a problem. When did you last take a day off?" She opened her mouth to respond and realized she did not have a good answer. "I took a sick day in August." "That does not count." He moved closer, his expression serious. "I need you at your best, Clara, and that means not running yourself into the ground. Take the weekend. Actually take it. No emails, no calls, no work. What about the Chicago files? They can wait until Monday. The world will not end if everything is not perfect immediately." He softened slightly. "Please. For me, take a break." There was something in his voice, a concern that went beyond professional obligation. Clara felt her resolve wavering. "Okay, no work this weekend." "Good." He glanced at his watch. "It is 9:30 on a Friday. Let me buy you dinner." Her heart skipped. "What, dinner? You have not eaten, I have not eaten, and there is a Thai place 2 blocks from here that is open late." Consider it an apology for being a demanding boss. This was dangerous territory. Clara knew she should decline, make an excuse, maintain the appropriate boundaries. But she was hungry and tired, and the thought of going home to her empty apartment was suddenly depressing. "Thai sounds good," she heard herself say. 20 minutes later, they were seated in a small restaurant with worn wooden tables and the smell of basil and lemongrass in the air. It was the kind of place where you ordered at the counter and the food arrived in plastic baskets, unpretentious and perfect. Xander had loosened the collar of his shirt, looking more relaxed than Clara had ever seen him. "I have been coming here for years," he said, stirring sugar into his Thai iced tea, "since before Harrison Global was even a real company." "How long ago was that?" 8 years. I was 24, working out of a shared office space in Queens, trying to convince people to invest in my ideas." He smiled at the memory. "I ate a lot of cheap Thai food that year." Clara leaned forward, genuinely curious. "What made you start the company?" "Stubbornness, mostly. I was working for a development firm that cared more about cutting corners than building something lasting. I watched them put up buildings that would start falling apart in 10 years, all because it saved 5% on costs. I kept pushing for better materials, better designs, and eventually they told me to get on board or get out. He shrugged. So I got out. That must have been terrifying. It was. I had $30,000 in savings and no idea what I was doing, but I knew I could do it better. He looked at her across the table. What about you? Why real estate development? With your organizational skills, you could work anywhere. Honestly, I wanted to build things. Not literally, but be part of the process. My dad used to take me to construction sites when I was a kid. I loved watching empty lots turn into homes, seeing something permanent take shape. She smiled, a little embarrassed. It probably sounds silly. It does not sound silly at all. It sounds like you understand what we actually do here, which is more than I can say for half the executives. The food arrived, and they ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Xander spoke again. Can I ask you something personal? Clara's pulse quickened. Sure. Why are you not dating anyone? She nearly choked on her pad thai. Excuse me. He looked almost embarrassed, a rare expression on him. I am sorry that came out wrong. I just meant you are smart, you are accomplished, you are. He trailed off, seeming to catch himself. I cannot imagine you lack for options. Clara set down her fork, her mind racing. This conversation had veered into territory that the handbook definitely would not approve of. I am focused on my career right now. Dating takes time and energy, and I would rather invest that in work. That is a very diplomatic answer. It is also true. She met his eyes. Why are you not dating anyone? Xander laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his usually serious face. Fair question. Honestly, same reason as you, building this company has been all-consuming. Plus, it is hard to date when you are not sure if someone wants you or wants access to your money and connections. That must be lonely. Sometimes, he admitted. But so is being in a relationship with someone who does not actually see you. I would rather be alone than be with someone for the wrong reasons. They fell into talking about other things, safer things. Books they had read, places they wanted to travel, the absurdity of New York rent prices. Clara found herself laughing more than she had in months, relaxing in a way she never did at the office. Xander was different here, away from the corporate environment. He was funny, self-deprecating, surprisingly easy to talk to. When they finally left the restaurant, it was past 11. The October air was cool and Clara pulled her coat tighter. Xander walked beside her toward the subway entrance. Thank you for dinner, she said. I needed that more than I realized. Thank you for the company. He hesitated, his hands in his pockets. Clara, I know this is probably inappropriate, but I really enjoyed tonight, just talking as people instead of boss and assistant. Her heart was pounding. I enjoyed it too. We should do it again sometime. As friends, he added quickly. Just two people who happen to work together, having dinner. Every logical part of Clara's brain was screaming at her to decline, to maintain boundaries, to remember Section 4.7, subsection C. But standing there under the streetlights, looking at Xander's hopeful expression, she could not bring herself to say no. As friends, she agreed. That would be nice. They said goodnight, and Clara descended into the subway with her mind spinning. This was how it started, she knew. This was how people ended up violating company policy and wrecking their careers. Small steps, innocent rationalizations, until suddenly you were in too deep to see the way out. But as she rode home, replaying the evening in her mind, she could not bring herself to regret it. The following Monday, things were different. Not obviously so, but in small, subtle ways that Clara noticed. Xander smiled at her more. He found reasons to stop by her desk, to ask her opinion on things that he probably did not need her input on. They fell into a pattern of having coffee together in the mornings before the office got busy. 15 minutes where they talked about everything except work. Clara told herself they were just friends. Friends who happened to have excellent chemistry. Friends who sometimes held eye contact a little too long. Friends who were absolutely not violating any company policies because they were not actually dating. It was a fragile fiction, and it lasted until the company holiday party in mid-December. Harrison Global rented out an event space in Midtown, a glittering affair with an open bar, catered food, and a jazz band playing in the corner. Clara wore a black cocktail dress she had found on sale, simple but elegant, and tried not to feel self-conscious as she mingled with executives and their spouses. She was talking to someone from accounting when she felt eyes on her, and turned to find Xander across the room, staring at her with an expression that made her forget how to breathe. He was wearing a tuxedo, looking like he had stepped out of a magazine, but it was the way he was looking at her that made everything else fade into background noise. He crossed the room with deliberate steps, and Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. "You look beautiful," he said quietly, close enough that only she could hear. "You clean up pretty well yourself," she managed, trying for lightness. "Dance with me." It was not a question. He offered his hand, and Clara took it, letting him lead her to the dance floor where a few other couples were swaying to the music. His hand settled on her waist, warm through the thin fabric of her dress, and she rested her hand on his shoulder. They moved together easily, naturally, like they had done this 1,000 times before. "This is dangerous," Clara whispered. "I know," Xander replied, his voice rough. "I have been telling myself that for months, but Clara, I cannot keep pretending I do not feel this." Her breath caught. "Feel what?" He pulled her closer, their bodies nearly touching. "Like I am falling for my assistant and it is the worst possible timing and the worst possible situation, but I cannot seem to stop." Clara closed her eyes, torn between elation and panic. "Xander, the company policy." "I know." Section 4.7, subsection C, immediate termination. His hand tightened on her waist. "I wrote that policy. I know exactly what it says and what it means. But I also know that I have never felt this way about anyone, and the thought of not exploring this, of letting you walk away because of some rule, is unbearable." She looked up at him, searching his face. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I am willing to risk everything if you are. I am saying that breaking policy would be worth it if it means being with you. But I need to know if you feel the same way." The world seemed to narrow to just the two of them, spinning slowly in the middle of a crowded party. Clara thought about all the reasons this was a terrible idea, all the ways it could go wrong. She thought about her career, her reputation, the whispers that would follow if anyone found out. She thought about the handbook and the rules and the logical, sensible choice. Then she thought about the past 3 months, the mornings over coffee, the late nights working side by side, the way Xander made her laugh, the way he saw her as more than just an assistant. She thought about how alive she felt when she was with him, how the world seemed brighter and more full of possibility. "I feel the same way," she said, her voice barely audible over the music. "I have been trying not to, but I do." Xander's expression transformed, relief and joy flooding his features. "Then we will figure it out, together. I do not care what it takes. We could both lose our jobs. Then we will find new ones. Clara, I have built this company from nothing once. I can do it again. But I cannot manufacture whatever this is between us. This is rare and real, and I am not letting it go without a fight." She wanted to kiss him so badly it hurt, but they were surrounded by employees and executives and people who would absolutely notice. Instead, she squeezed his hand and let him hold her close as they finished the dance. "We need to be careful," she said as the song ended. "We cannot let anyone know until we figure out what to do about the policy. Agreed. No one can know. He stepped back reluctantly, professional distance restored, but his eyes still held that warmth. Meet me tomorrow. Not the office. Somewhere we can talk properly. Clara nodded, her mind already racing ahead to the complications and logistics. There is a coffee shop in Brooklyn, near my apartment. It is quiet on Sunday mornings. Send me the address. They separated, returning to opposite sides of the party, but Clara felt fundamentally changed. She had just agreed to risk everything she had worked for, to violate company policy with the CEO himself. And instead of feeling terrified, she felt excited. Like she was finally taking a chance on something that mattered more than safety and rules. The next morning, Clara arrived at the coffee shop early, claiming a table in the back corner. She had barely slept, her mind spinning through scenarios and possibilities. When Xander walked in, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of his usual suit, she was struck again by how different he seemed outside the office. More human, more vulnerable. He ordered 2 coffees and sat down across from her, his expression serious. I spent all night thinking about this. Me too. The policy exists for good reasons. Power dynamics, favoritism, harassment claims. I understand why it is there and I stand by its importance in general. But Clara, what is happening between us is not some casual office fling. This is real and it deserves a real chance. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. So what do we do? Legally, I can change the policy. I own the majority share of the company, but that would take time, board approval, and it would raise questions. He leaned forward. The other option is that one of us transfers to a different department where we do not have a direct reporting relationship. Clara's heart sank. You want me to leave my position? No, I want you to consider all options. You could transfer to another executive's team. You would still be in the company, just not directly under me. Or, she prompted, sensing there was more. Or I promote you, not as a favor, but because you deserve it. You have the skills to be more than an assistant, Clara. I have been thinking about creating a project management position, someone who oversees acquisitions from start to finish. It would be lateral in terms of reporting structure, answering to the VP of development instead of to me directly. It would solve the policy issue and give you the career advancement you have earned. She stared at him. You are serious, completely. But it has to be what you want. I will not pressure you into anything. Clara thought about it, turning the idea over in her mind. She loved her current job, loved working closely with Xander, but he was right that she had outgrown it in some ways. A project management role would be challenging, would give her more responsibility and visibility. It would also solve the immediate policy problem. What happens if we do this and it does not work out? She asked quietly. Between us, I mean. What if we date and it ends badly? Xander reached across the table and took her hand. Then we will be adults about it. We will be professional. But Clara, I would not be here if I thought this was going to flame out in 3 weeks. I am all in on this, on us. She looked at their joined hands, at his steady gaze, and felt the last of her resistance crumble. Okay, let us do it. The promotion, the transfer, all of it. A smile broke across his face. Yeah. But Xander, we do this right. No shortcuts, no favoritism. I earned that promotion on my merits and we keep our relationship separate from work. Agreed. He squeezed her hand. Though I reserve the right to think about you constantly during boring meetings. She laughed, feeling lighter than she had in days. I think I can allow that. They spent the rest of the morning planning, mapping out timelines and logistics. The promotion would be posted internally first, and Clara would apply along with anyone else interested. Xander would recuse himself from the hiring decision, letting his VP of development make the final call based on qualifications alone. It would take a few weeks, maybe a month, but it was the right way to do things. In the meantime, they agreed to be discreet. No public displays of affection, no obvious changes in behavior at the office. It was agonizing and thrilling in equal measure, carrying on normal professional interactions while knowing everything had changed beneath the surface. Clara threw herself into preparing for the project management interview. She created portfolio presentations of her work, researched best practices, and practiced answering tough questions. When the interview day came, she faced the VP of Development with confidence, laying out her vision for improving acquisition processes and streamlining communication between departments. She did not mention Xander once. A week later, she got the call. She had the job. Xander maintained perfect professionalism when she told him, congratulating her with the same tone he would use with any employee. But that evening, when she was packing up her desk to move to her new office down the hall, he appeared with a bottle of champagne. "For celebrating," he said, glancing around to make sure they were alone. "You earned this, Clara. That presentation was brilliant. I could not have done it without everything I learned working for you. You absolutely could have. You have always had this in you." He set the champagne down and moved closer, his voice dropping. "And now that you do not report to me anymore, I can finally do what I have been wanting to do for months." He kissed her, soft and tentative at first, then deeper as she responded. Clara felt like she was falling and flying at the same time, her hands fisting in his shirt as she kissed him back. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, she was grinning. "That was worth the wait," she said. "Just the beginning," Xander promised. They started dating properly after that, real dates where they did not have to worry about being seen together. Xander took her to Broadway shows and quiet restaurants in neighborhoods where they would not run into colleagues. Clara introduced him to her favorite bookstore in Brooklyn, and they spent Saturday afternoons browsing the shelves and arguing playfully about which thriller novels had the most implausible plots. It was easy and natural, the kind of relationship where they could talk for hours or sit in comfortable silence. Still, they kept it quiet at work. Not secret exactly, but private. They did not advertise their relationship, did not engage in PDA in the office, maintained professional boundaries during business hours. Clara was determined to prove that she had earned her position on merit, that she was more than just the CEO's girlfriend. She worked harder than ever, determined to excel at her new role. The Austin project became her baby, and she threw herself into managing every detail. She coordinated between contractors and city officials, solved problems before they escalated, and kept everything on schedule and under budget. When the building finally broke ground in February, she was there at the ceremony, standing with the team and feeling the satisfaction of seeing something she had helped build come to life. Xander was there too, giving a speech about vision and quality and building for the future. When he mentioned the exceptional work of his project management team, his eyes found Clara in the crowd, and she felt that secret thrill of being seen, being valued. It was not until March, 5 months into their relationship, that things started to get complicated. Clara and Xander had been careful, but Harrison Global was not a huge company. People talked. There were rumors, whispers about how the CEO seemed to smile more around the new project manager, how they always seemed to leave the office around the same time. The rumors came to a head when someone from HR approached Clara in the break room, asking pointed questions about her promotion and her relationship with Xander. Clara maintained that everything had been handled by the book, which was true, but she could see the skepticism in the HR manager's eyes. That evening, she and Xander sat in his apartment, discussing the situation. They had reached the point where they spent most nights together, either at his place or hers, and it had become increasingly difficult to maintain the fiction that they were nothing more than colleagues. "Maybe we should just tell people," Xander said, pacing in front of the window. "Make it official. We have followed every rule, done everything properly. We have nothing to hide." Clara curled up on his couch, watching him. "It will change how people see me at work. They will always wonder if I earned my position or if I got it because I am dating you. You did earn it. You know that, I know that, anyone paying attention knows that. But some people will always believe the worst." She sighed. "I hate that we have to hide this. I hate feeling like we are doing something wrong when we are not." Xander stopped pacing and sat beside her, pulling her into his arms. "Then let us stop hiding. Let us face whatever comes together. I love you, Clara. I want everyone to know it." Her heart stopped. They had not said those words yet, had been dancing around them for weeks. "You love me. I am completely, hopelessly in love with you. Have been since you argued with me about construction permits in that conference room last year." He cupped her face in his hands. "I love how smart you are, how dedicated, how you make me laugh. I love that you call me out when I am being unreasonable and that you understand why this company matters so much to me. I love everything about you." Tears pricked Clara's eyes. "I love you too. I have loved you for so long that I cannot remember when it started." They kissed, and it felt different now, weighted with those 3 words. When they finally broke apart, Clara felt a sense of certainty settling over her. "Okay," she said. "Let us tell people. Let us do this right." The next day, they requested a meeting with the head of HR and the board chairman. They laid out the entire timeline, from when their relationship began to the steps they had taken to avoid conflicts of interest. They provided documentation of the hiring process for Clara's promotion, showing that Xander had recused himself and that she had been selected based purely on qualifications. The HR manager listened carefully, reviewing the documentation. Finally, she nodded. "You have handled this appropriately." The relationship began after the direct reporting structure was dissolved, and proper procedures were followed for the promotion. From an HR perspective, there is no violation of company policy. The board chairman, an older man named Vincent Harper who had been one of Harrison Global's first investors, was less easily convinced. "Perception matters in business," he said. "Even if everything was done properly, this creates the appearance of impropriety." Xander met his gaze steadily. "I understand that concern, but I am not willing to hide my relationship with Clara to manage appearances. We have been transparent. We have followed every rule, and we will continue to maintain professional boundaries at work. If the board has concerns about my judgment, I am happy to address them, but I will not end a relationship that makes me happy because of how it might look." Vincent studied him for a long moment, then turned to Clara. "What about you, Miss Jennings? Are you prepared for the scrutiny this will bring? People will question your accomplishments." Clara straightened in her chair. "Let them. I know what I have earned. I am good at my job, and I will continue to be good at my job regardless of who I am dating. If people want to reduce me to just the CEO's girlfriend, that says more about them than it does about me." A smile tugged at Vincent's mouth. "You have got backbone. I respect that." He looked between them. "Here is what I recommend. You make an official announcement to the company. Own it. Be transparent about the timeline. Make it clear that company policies were followed. Get ahead of the rumors before they become a bigger problem." They took his advice. That afternoon, Xander sent a company-wide email with Clara copied, explaining that they were in a relationship that had begun after Clara's transfer to her current position. He reiterated Harrison Global's commitment to professional conduct and emphasized that all company policies had been followed. The email was straightforward, factual, and gave no room for speculation. The response was mixed. Some people were supportive, sending congratulatory messages. Others were clearly skeptical or disapproving. Clara felt the weight of judgment in meetings, saw people whispering in hallways. It was uncomfortable and frustrating, but she refused to let it affect her work. The real test came 2 weeks later when Clara was leading a presentation for a major client in Chicago. The acquisition she had been managing for 4 months was ready to move forward, pending final approval from the investors. She stood in front of a room full of executives, including Xander, and walked them through the project timeline, budget, and projected returns. Halfway through, one of the investors interrupted. "Miss Jennings, I have to ask, you are dating the CEO, correct? How can we be sure this project has been properly vetted and not just pushed through as a favor?" The room went silent. Clara felt every eye on her, felt the weight of the question. She could see Xander tense, ready to defend her, but she held up a hand. "That is a fair question," she said calmly. "So let me address it with facts. Every decision on this project has been reviewed by the VP of Development and the Finance Department. The budget projections are based on independent market analysis conducted by a third-party firm. The contractors were selected through a competitive bidding process with multiple stakeholders involved. I have managed this acquisition with the same rigor and standards applied to every project at Harrison Global, regardless of my personal relationships." She clicked to the next slide, which showed detailed breakdowns of every major decision point, complete with sign-offs from various department heads. As you can see, no decision was made unilaterally. If you have concerns about any specific aspect of the project, I am happy to provide additional documentation. The investor studied the screen, then nodded. "That is thorough. I appreciate the transparency." The rest of the presentation went smoothly, and when it ended, the client signed off on the project. As everyone filed out, Xander caught Clara's eye and gave her a subtle nod of approval. She felt a surge of pride. She had handled it perfectly, had proven her competence under pressure. That evening, Xander took her to dinner at a rooftop restaurant with views of the Manhattan skyline. They sat outside despite the cool April air, wrapped in blankets provided by the restaurant, and talked about everything that had happened. "You were incredible today," Xander said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "The way you handled that question, the documentation you had prepared, you made them realize that your work speaks for itself." Clara squeezed his hand. "I have spent my whole career working twice as hard to be taken half as seriously. I was not about to let our relationship undo that. I hate that you have to prove yourself more than anyone else. So do I. But Xander, I do not regret this. Us. Even with the complications and the judgment, I would choose you every time." His eyes softened. "I would choose you too, every single time." They finished dinner and walked back to Xander's apartment, hand in hand. The city was alive around them, people rushing past on their way to shows or restaurants or home. Clara felt a contentment she had never experienced before, a sense of being exactly where she was supposed to be. Over the next few months, things settled into a new normal. People at work gradually accepted their relationship, especially as Clara continued to excel at her job. She successfully managed 3 more acquisitions, each one coming in on time and under budget. Her reputation grew, and slowly but surely, people started seeing her as more than just the CEO's girlfriend. Xander was careful never to show her favoritism at work. If anything, he was harder on her projects than anyone else's, pushing her to maintain the highest standards. Clara appreciated it, understood that he was protecting both of them from accusations of impropriety. At work, they were professionals. At home, they were partners. It was in June, nearly a year after that first dinner at the Thai restaurant, that Xander proposed. They were at her parents' house in Ohio, visiting for the weekend. Clara's father had taken to Xander immediately, the two of them spending hours talking about construction and design. Her mother had been more reserved, clearly worried about the age difference and the power dynamics, but had warmed up after seeing how Xander treated her daughter. They were sitting on the back porch after dinner, watching fireflies dance across the yard. Clara's parents had gone inside to clean up, leaving them alone in the gathering dusk. "I talked to your father earlier," Xander said suddenly. Clara looked at him. "About what?" "About whether he would be okay with me marrying you." Her heart stopped. "What did he say?" "He said that if you are happy, he is happy. And then he gave me a 15-minute lecture about treating you right, which I absolutely deserved." Xander turned to face her, pulling a small box from his pocket. "Clara Jennings, you have made me believe in things I thought were just fairy tales. You make me better, you challenge me, you make every day brighter. I know we have had to fight for this relationship, and I know it has not been easy, but I cannot imagine my life without you in it." He opened the box, revealing a simple but beautiful diamond ring. "Will you marry me?" Clara was crying now, happy tears streaming down her face. "Yes, absolutely yes." He slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her, deep and tender. From inside the house, Clara heard her mother's delighted squeal, and they both started laughing. "I think she was watching from the window," Clara said. "I am counting on it," Xander replied, grinning. The engagement brought a new wave of attention at work, but Clara was ready for it now. She and Xander announced it together, and while there were still some skeptics, most people were genuinely happy for them. The Austin building had been completed by then, a stunning example of modern architecture that was already winning awards. It stood as proof of Clara's capabilities, a permanent testament to what she could achieve. They planned the wedding for the following spring, wanting time to do it right. Clara's mother went into full planning mode, and Xander proved surprisingly invested in details like floral arrangements and seating charts. They decided on a venue in upstate New York, a historic estate with gardens and stone terraces. The week before the wedding, Clara was in her office reviewing final details for a new project in Boston when Xander appeared in her doorway. It was rare for him to come to her office during work hours now, both of them careful about maintaining boundaries. "You have a minute?" he asked. "For you, always." He closed the door and sat down across from her desk. "I have been thinking about something, and I wanted to run it by you before I do anything official." "Okay. Vincent is retiring from the board next year. He recommended that we add a new member, someone with operational experience in project management." Xander leaned forward. "I want to nominate you." Clara blinked. "Me? Xander, I have only been in this role for a little over a year. And in that time, you have managed 6 major acquisitions, all successful, and you have improved our processes across the board. You have the vision and the skills we need on the board. This is not nepotism, Clara. This is recognizing talent." She thought about it, turning the idea over. A board position would be huge for her career, would give her influence over company strategy and direction. But it would also intensify scrutiny, especially given her relationship with Xander. "What does the rest of the board think?" she asked. "I have not proposed it yet. I wanted your permission first. But Clara, I would not suggest this if I did not genuinely believe you are the right person for it. The company needs your perspective." She looked at him, at the man who had believed in her capabilities even when she doubted herself, who had fought for their relationship without ever compromising her professional integrity. She thought about the scared 24-year-old who had stepped into that elevator over a year ago, and how much she had grown since then. "Okay," she said, "nominate me, and I will earn that board seat the same way I have earned everything else." Xander smiled, that private smile he reserved just for her. "I would expect nothing less." The wedding was everything Clara had dreamed of. She wore a lace gown that her mother had cried over, and Xander wore a tuxedo that made him look like he belonged in a classic movie. They exchanged vows under an arch of spring flowers, promising to love and support each other through whatever challenges came. Clara's father walked her down the aisle with tears in his eyes, and when he placed her hand in Xander's, he whispered, "You chose well." The reception was a celebration filled with laughter and dancing and heartfelt toasts. Vincent Harper stood up and told embarrassing stories about Xander's early days as a CEO, and Clara's college roommate revealed mortifying details about Clara's first attempt at cooking, which had nearly set their dorm on fire. They danced under string lights as the sun set, surrounded by everyone they loved. Later, as they were cutting the cake, Xander leaned in and whispered, "Any regrets about breaking policy?" Clara looked around at the celebration, at the life they had built together despite every obstacle and rule. She thought about how scared she had been that night after the holiday party, how unsure about risking everything. She thought about every hard conversation, every moment of doubt, every time they had chosen each other over the easy path. "Not even one," she whispered back. Breaking policy was worth everything. The board approved Clara's nomination 3 months after the wedding, and at 26, she became the youngest member of Harrison Global's board of directors. She brought fresh perspectives on project management and employee development, and her insights helped shape company strategy for years to come. People stopped questioning whether she had earned her position. Her work spoke too loudly for doubts to linger. 2 years after their wedding, Clara discovered she was pregnant. She and Xander had talked about children, had agreed they wanted them when the timing was right. Standing in their bathroom holding a positive pregnancy test, Clara felt a rush of joy and terror. They were going to be parents. Xander's reaction was everything she hoped for. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing and crying at the same time. They told her parents over video call, and her mother immediately started planning a baby shower. The pregnancy was smooth, and Clara worked up until 2 weeks before her due date, determined to finish the Seattle acquisition she had been managing. Their daughter was born on a snowy December morning, healthy and perfect. They named her Emma Rose, and she had Xander's gray-blue eyes and Clara's determination. Holding her for the first time, Clara felt her heart expand in ways she had not known were possible. Xander proved to be a devoted father, taking parental leave and learning to change diapers with the same intensity he brought to business negotiations. He would pace the apartment at 3 in the morning, Emma against his shoulder, singing off key lullabies. Clara would watch them from the doorway, overwhelmed by love for this man who had taken a chance on breaking rules for her. When Emma was 6 months old, Clara returned to work part-time, gradually increasing her hours as they found their rhythm as parents. Harrison Global had implemented new family leave policies, and Clara had been instrumental in pushing for them. She wanted other women in the company to have the support she had, wanted to build a culture where having a family and having a career were not mutually exclusive. Years passed in the beautiful chaos of building a life together. They had a son, James, 2 years after Emma. They moved to a brownstone in Brooklyn with a backyard where the kids could play. Clara continued to advance at Harrison Global, eventually becoming Chief Operating Officer, while Xander remained CEO. They were partners in every sense of the word, at work and at home. On their 10th wedding anniversary, They returned to the Thai restaurant where they had their first unofficial date. It looked exactly the same, still serving food in plastic baskets, still smelling of basil and lemongrass. They sat at a corner table, and Clara marveled at how much had changed since that nervous evening so many years ago. "You remember what you said to me here?" Xander asked, stirring his Thai iced tea. "That first night, I said a lot of things. You said you wanted to build things, to be part of creating something permanent." He reached across the table and took her hand. "We have built something pretty amazing, have we not?" Clara looked at their intertwined fingers, at the wedding bands they both wore. She thought about their children at home with her parents, probably being spoiled with ice cream and late bedtimes. She thought about Harrison Global, the company they had shaped together, and the lives they had built brick by brick. "We have built everything," she said softly. "A family, a partnership, a life. And it all started with you being willing to break the rules for me." "Best decision I ever made," Xander said. "You know, people used to tell me that mixing business and personal relationships was asking for disaster, that it would ruin everything." "Were they right?" he laughed. "Not even close. Clara, you made me better at everything. Better at business because you push me to think differently. Better at life because you remind me what actually matters. Falling in love with you was not a mistake or a rule-breaking disaster. It was the smartest thing I ever did." Clara felt tears gathering, the happy kind that came from being perfectly content. "I love you. I have loved you since you took those coffee cups from my hands and told me I did good work, maybe even before that. I love you too. Always have, always will." They finished their dinner and walked home through Brooklyn streets, illuminated by streetlights. Clara leaned into Xander's side, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady presence that had been her anchor through everything. They had taken a risk all those years ago, had violated company policy and faced judgment and uncertainty. But standing here now, with everything they had built together, Clara knew with absolute certainty that it had been worth it. Every difficult conversation, every skeptical look, every moment of doubt had led them here, to a life filled with love and laughter and partnership. Breaking the rules had not destroyed them. It had freed them to build something extraordinary. And that, Clara thought as they climbed the steps to their brownstone, was worth everything,